Hey, Andrew James here, and I got some recent requests from the sales team and a couple media buyers that I just go back through something. I have this deck. We have a longer training for all this. People experienced this early on in one of our foundational workshops where we help people predictably figure out how to spend money on ads to get book buyers, mostly, but it works for anything. So I thought I'd just quickly go through the basic concepts so this was available. Again, we called it our Predictably Profitable Acquisition Accelerator. I realize that's a mouthful, but it's worth me explaining for a second because I know it's not a memorable name, but it is worth understanding. The goal is to acquire customers and leads predictably at a profit, which most advertising does not do. And then for us, this process should accelerate how quickly you get to that. And so that's kind of the goal. And I'm just going to go over this idea of how testing works. And I like to start with a quote from Elon, which is, I take the position that I'm always to some degree wrong, and the aspiration is to be less wrong. And this is what I mean. So if you imagine you could classify all of your creative test results. So we would be taking a whole bunch of ads or a bunch of subject lines or a bunch of landing pages or whatever, and trying them, seeing how well they perform. If you were to score them with one of four categories, one being -1, bad, 0, it's kind of a push, it's not really good or bad, middle of the road, +1, and then I don't know. The three categories, when you start, all the squares look like this. They're all really question marks, right? Then you want to test, and the goal of the test is simply to figure out which ones are green, red, and black. And the idea is to learn from all of them, right? We're going to essentially take those green ones and do more of that, run more iterations. We're going to get rid of the red ones, but we're also going to learn what doesn't work. And we're going to not worry about testing the black ones the next time. So a couple basic concepts here. Impressions are greater than clicks versus clicks to click-throughs. So what that means is it just costs a lot more money to make a decision based on clicks to a landing page. Just to use a simple example, oftentimes you'll see people have a CPC of $1. If I want to buy 1,000 clicks, it's going to cost me $1,000. If I had 2 landing pages I want to test, that's going to cost me $500 for each landing page if I wanted to try 2 pages. Impressions often cost between $5 and $25 for 1,000 impressions. And so the number of impressions I can buy, even though the quality of somebody seeing an ad and clicking through, it's not as strong a signal as what they might do on a web page. The number of impressions I can buy and the number of variants I can try overwhelms the clicks. So that should help you. How much is 1,000 clicks? How much is 1,000 impressions? The biggest value, though, is that you get more inputs. The biggest downside to the spend $1,000, test 2 pages example is that you only have 2 pages. Whereas in the examples I was showing you before, you might have 25 different ads. And so being able to understand those, just the number of at bats you're taking when you test that way, and the number of signals you can get of this worked, this worked, this worked, this didn't work, is really important. We tell people to look for batch sizes, so meaning how many creatives do you do at a time, of kind of like 5 to 25. The team usually tries to get to 10 because it's a nice round number. Optimal degrees of variance, we're really trying to test 1 or 2 main variables. So if you're seeing this presentation, I obviously don't have time to go into all the details, and it's pretty extensive to really get these principles across to you. But a very simple example would be if you had 2 images and 2 headlines, or 5 headlines, right? And so that would be 10 images total. And you'd be able to get from that, hey, which image overall is a better image? And which of these headlines overall is a better headline? The master rule is what's required to validate your assumption and reduce false negatives and false positives close to 0. That's the overall objective. And just because I'm going fast, I'm not going to talk more about that. Being successful has more to do with how to deal with your not knowing than anything you know. If you can think How do I know I'm right? Then stress test yourself and find the smartest people who disagree with you, and you have thoughtful disagreements so you can take in and stress test. Not only does it provide a lot of learning, but it stress tests your decision, raises your probabilities of being right. That's Ray Dalio, one of the most successful investors and teachers of investment and thinking and decision-making principles in the world. So I'll just close with this idea. Most of the time, what people do as marketers and business owners is they run a test, they come up with some ideas, they evaluate it, and then they decide. And what I would invite you to understand is if you can reverse this, you pick your decision criteria, then you run your test, then you execute the test, you're going to be dramatically more successful in the decisions you make. So that's the last thing I'll say is when we run a test like this with your creative, if you're looking at something we do with Cerebro and you're looking at some of the charts that show how the results come out, the criteria, the decision criteria is already actually built into Cerebro, which is great. And the criteria is essentially a score. We've gotten Cerebro for click-through and CPC. And we also have the color set to score to the top percentiles. So really what you're trying to do if you test 10 creatives is find the top 2 or 3 and go forward with those. And for sure, avoid the things that are common about the bottom 2 or 3 and just kind of ignore the middle. Lots of other things we talk about in all of these trainings, but I just wanted to give you that in a quick under 10-minute video to help you understand what is possible with Cerebro. Predictive ad testing is what we often call this. Thanks.